Hello, I am Jamila McMallow, and I'm a mindset coach for high-performing women executives and established business owners. I am so happy that you are here to join me for this incredible training on how to stay married to a good man. I love this. This picture here is a picture of me and my husband. As you can see, it really captures well, the joy that we have in our relationship. And just a little bit about my past. This is actually my second marriage. My first marriage ended in divorce after 14 years of toxicity. And I, went through that. It was very painful, but I did my healing work and I came out on the other side, found the love of my life. And here we are almost a decade later, children and all. So what I'm sharing with you is not something that I've picked up from a book, something that I've learned from watching other people. This is from my own personal experience and application and from what I've done with my clients. Okay, so let's get into it. So first of all, I want to share this with you. These are some testimonials from some ladies who have worked with me as clients, some who simply attended my webinars, and really sharing their thoughts on what they got out of it. And the reason why I share this with you is because before I jump into the information, I really want you to understand that, like I said, I am speaking from my personal experience. I'm not speaking from a book, but I also have 20 years coaching and mentoring experience in a variety of professional settings. I'm a certified CBT practitioner, and I have coached over 100 women at the time of this video and probably spent close to 1,000 hours coaching them around this very topic: relationships, relationship with self, relationship with men, relationship with money. And within that, relationships with men is, being married to a good one or desiring to be married to a good one. So this training is really for women who are already married to a good man or who desire to be. If you're in a toxic relationship, this isn't going to help much because I'm really basing everything upon the foundation that you are already in a relationship with a man who is not toxic, abusive, etc., or that you yourself are single and are desiring to be in a marriage with a good man who is not toxic, abusive, etc. Okay, so like I said, these are some of the sentiments from women who have attended my webinars, who have worked with me personally one-on-one as their coach. And the one that I really love is here on the side where you see the Oprah face crying. I don't personally celebrate holidays, but my clients do, some of them. And this one in particular, her husband highlighted how at Thanksgiving he was thankful for me. And it was funny because obviously I don't work with men. I don't work with married couples. I worked with his wife. She was my client. But he was so affected by the change in her, through our work together, that he was grateful for me that we were working together because it improved his marriage. By his wife focusing her energy and attention on herself, it completely changed their relationship for the better. Okay. All right. So what we're going to be covering today are three basic areas. We're going to talk about healing your past. We're going to talk about changing your beliefs about men in marriage. And then we're going to talk a little bit about gratitude and why that's something that's critically important when it comes to staying happily married to a good man. See, it's only finding a good man is like part one, right? But then what are you supposed to do with him once you have him? And for some women, you may, be hobbling along. You're happy, you feel like things are going well, but ... And so we're going to talk about the ... Okay. So healing your past. This is where I'm going to spend the bulk of the time of this training because this is so critically important to your relationship because it has everything to do with what you're bringing to the table, which is 99% of what is going to be causing the issues that you might be contributing to in the relationship. Okay. You can't control him. You can only control yourself. And you are all of your past experiences, all of your traumas, all of your joys, all of your pain, all of that. You bring all of that to the table. Being married is the closest relationship you will ever have with another human being. It is even closer than the one you share with your child. Okay. You are one flesh. Okay. So it is a very, very intimate relationship, and all of who you are shows up in that relationship. And that can be, there are good things about that, but we're here to try to troubleshoot, and work through the stuff that's not so good about your past that you brought to the table. Now, why is this important to heal your past? Well, first of all, that childhood relationship that you had with your father or didn't have actually has a direct effect on your relationship with your husband. Why? Because how you experienced your father's presence or absence taught you what you could come to expect when it comes to being in relationships with men, how you could expect to be treated, how you really could expect to feel. So if your father wasn't around and that made you feel like you weren't important to him or you were unworthy, you may find yourself in a relationship with someone who is emotionally unavailable. Maybe he's not abusive. Maybe he is good to you, but maybe he's really not there for you as much as you would like him to be emotionally. So it's that similar same feeling. Do you understand what I'm saying? Also, the type of relationship you have with your mother, also the example that you saw in her will affect how you're showing up in your marriage because you live what you learn. So you have an idea of what you think men are supposed to be. And if you had a past of toxic relationships with men and now you're married to a good man, right? There's going to be a disconnect. There's going to be some issues there because your belief system about men is based on the relationship that you had with your father, the relationship you had, or the non-existent relationship you had, because that told you something about yourself in relation to men. Okay. Now, your mother is your living, breathing example of what it means to be a woman. So if you saw her suffer in her relationship with your father or, your stepfather, whatever relationship she had with men, if you watched her be abused, if you watched her be mistreated, that's what she taught you how to be. She taught you how to be mistreated. She taught you how to stay too long. She taught you all of those behaviors. And the thing about it is, if she was a woman who maybe had multiple men, like maybe she put her men ahead of you, then you almost have a negative view of her and thus of women. And that really actually impacts how you see yourself. If you're the type of woman that says, I always struggle to have relationships with women, you probably have mommy issues. Your relationship, we could probably just start there. The relationship with your mother has everything to do with your subsequent relationships with women and your relationship with yourself. And as much as we try not to be our mothers, we usually grow up and become her. Now, why are these things so important? Because all of these things that I'm talking about are really kind of the stepping stones to toxic relationships. And that is probably why you've at least had one or two prior to this one that you're like, man, that sounds like my ex. And that's why, because that was your pattern. You live what you learn. You're attracted to what is familiar, not what's good for you. So if you have married someone outside of what's familiar, outside of what you believe men are supposed to be like, that's going to cause some stuff to go on in your head that's going to make things a little bit challenging to navigate. And like I said, we're going to break all that down. Now, if you received any sort of negative messaging, and I can almost guarantee you did, because who didn't when you were a kid? Because we're just from that era, right? When you cried, see, here's the thing. Little girls, because I have a daughter now, she's 2. We cry about just about everything. My daughter, she cries. Oh my goodness, she hurt her feelings. It's like, is she physically hurt? No, she's just her feelings or something doesn't, whatever, but that's how she expresses herself. Okay. So we cry. Even as women, when we get emotional, we release tears if we allow ourselves to, right? So, but when you were a little girl, if you got any type of negative feedback, if you were called a crybaby, if you were told to be quiet, if you got spanked or yelled at when you were crying, or if you were told to be quiet constantly, because little girls also like to talk a lot. So if you found yourself constantly being silenced when you were trying to communicate your thoughts and feelings, or when you were trying to express how you felt through tears, guess what that told you? Nobody cares about what you have to say, and nobody cares about how you feel, and crying and telling people how I feel doesn't do anything. So I might as well just stop. I'll just keep it to myself. Okay. So do you see how that could be a problem in a marriage? how are you ever supposed to open up and talk openly and vulnerably to your husband when you don't feel like that's something that you're allowed to do? That is something that, you know, is bad, that your emotions, your feelings are not something to be just unjudged, you know, just naturally accepted as a part of life, as being a human. You know, when what happens is we learn to judge our emotions. And I have worked with women who actually have developed almost like they had a trauma that we were dealing with, and they were more focused on the fact that they were feeling angry about what happened versus just allowing themselves to feel the feelings from what happened, so that could be released. So that judgment, sometimes the judgment that we have against ourselves for feeling still sad, hurt, whatever about something that happened in the past, that judgment is a clue that we probably received negative messaging as a little girl when it came to our emotions, when it came to us communicating. And so we do this, okay? Or we do this, we get really loud and obnoxious and feel like that's the only way anyone's going to listen to us, is if we yell and stomp our feet and bang our hands, okay, and throw stuff. Now, the other reason why healing your past is so important is because if you went through any sort of trauma, if you experienced any sort of abuse, abandonment, etc., and let me say this, we all, every single last human being on the planet, have experienced trauma. Because trauma in childhood, because all trauma means is a painful experience. That's all it means, okay? And so we all have experienced childhood trauma. Why? Because none of our parents were perfect. Not a one. None of our caregivers were perfect. And so even when we had maybe a good childhood, our parents stayed together, our home was stable, we saw love, they still weren't perfect. And so they still didn't get everything exactly right. And so there were some things about what they said, did, or showed us through their example that hurt us inadvertently, okay? And so sometimes what happens when we experience trauma as a child, and it's something that's very painful, we will shut down emotionally. We become disconnected in order to cope with it because we don't have the tools or the context to process what's going on. So we learn to turn off our emotions so we no longer feel. This, again, is a problem in a marriage where you need to stay close in this intimate relationship, communicating, etc., you know, with your husband, but you're not open because you shut down. So maybe he says something that hurts your feelings, even though he didn't mean to. And so rather than communicating your feelings or allowing him to see that he hurt you through tears, you shut down and you get real quiet. Okay. So do you see how that could be a problem? It probably is something that could be solved through a conversation, but you don't know how to do that, right? And so my question really is, can you relate to any of these? Maybe you relate to one, maybe you relate to all of them. And that's okay, because the fact that you're aware now of how your past could be affecting your relationship, it means you can be doing something about it. 9 times out of 10, or really 10 times out of 10, most people are, you know, running on a sort of autopilot. They're not really understanding that they are functioning from a state of fight or flight, a state of stress, a state of having been traumatized, whatever. They're just making choices and decisions on autopilot, not really being conscious or awake to why they're doing the things that they're doing, let alone putting forth the intentional effort to change it so that those behaviors become healthy and helpful towards the relationships and goals that they want to reach and have, okay? Now, even if you had a lot of those negative experiences as a little girl, you didn't come out of your childhood just completely, you know, feeling like learned helplessness, all these things. And I know that because you're here watching this masterclass. The women who are attracted to me, who are attracted to my content, are high performers. You are not someone who feels like a victim, like you can't do anything for yourself. In fact, you're watching this because you're married to a good man. So you got that part right, right? or you want to be with a good man. So you're thinking about, what do I need to do? What version of myself do I need to become in order to succeed in a happy, healthy relationship with a good man who's not bringing, the toxicity and the drama. So I say all that to say that when we experience these negative things in childhood, it doesn't just produce negative things. There are some good things that actually come from going through. We learn how to be certain ways that actually work for our lives. Okay. Like, for example, I know that you are focused, you're determined, you're driven, you were academically successful, if not in school, subsequently in whatever educational pursuits you've been after. You are professionally successful, whether that be in a career or in your business or both. You are an excellent friend. You're very dependable. People know that they can rely on you. You're that one. You're the rock. When it hits the fan and when the stuff goes down, you're the one your friends are calling that's going running into the building that's on fire while everybody else is running out. That's who you are. And so how you show up is with this confidence and with this strength and with this ability to hold other people up through their worst moments. So that's good. Okay. That's the good that came from you experiencing these things that otherwise might have broke other people. There are some people that have been broken, but you are not broken. You were not broken. You developed these good ways of being that allowed you to surpass, go beyond what perhaps even you thought was possible for yourself. So that's the good that came from those experiences, okay? Now, the not so good, right? Because, hey, there's a flip side to everything, is you actually may feel very lonely because you don't know how to communicate your feelings to other people. You don't know how to intimately connect with other people, whether that just be to your husband, even to other women, in friendships. You just don't know how to do that. Okay. And so as a result, because you're unable to really communicate effectively how you're thinking and feeling, you feel misunderstood or misjudged. People think you are someone you're not, or think you are a certain way when it's not really who you are. And usually it's that they think that you're a lot tougher or harder, when the truth is you're actually a lot sweeter and softer than you let on, or that people even are aware of. Okay. You also may have no self-compassion, meaning you drive yourself like a slave driver. You just are relentless. You make a mistake and you're like, you're just super hard on yourself. Your negative self-talk is at a maximum level most of the time. You are on your back. You got to be better, faster, stronger, etc. And I know because I've been there. I grew up, my parents were both educators, and I grew up in the city of Detroit. And when I grew up, it was predominantly Black. And as you know, being a minority in this particular country that I reside in comes with its own unique challenges. And as a result, when I was growing up, the teachers and things and my parents, they all came from an era. For example, my parents grew up in the South, in the Jim Crow South, with segregation and tons of, lynchings and discrimination, all that stuff. So they came out of that, and education was extremely important to them. Okay, because they felt like no one can take that from you. They can't take what's between your ears. And so we were raised and indoctrinated with this very strong belief around education, that you had to succeed. And when we went to school, that's what we heard. You got to be better, faster, stronger, because you already have a strike against you because of the color of your skin. So I'm sharing that with you because I get it. Okay. Because I was relentless, in how I pushed myself, because in a way, I felt like that's what I was supposed to do. I felt like that's what I had to do. It wasn't until I became an adult and further along into my adulthood that I realized that that's not how it has to be. I don't have to be in this state of all the time. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so if you're like that with yourself, listen, I'll say this, you can have high standards. Like I have high standards of excellence, mastery, expertise, etc. But I don't have to expect, something from myself that's unreasonable. Okay. Something I have had to learn is that my best is good enough. Okay. So if you are struggling with that no self-compassion, that's where it came from. It started in childhood, and it didn't necessarily have to come through like education like mine. Whatever the story was, that's what you came out with, this belief that you had to succeed no matter what. You almost had to become a machine because you had to reach the goal. There was no alternative option. Okay. You also may struggle with really knowing who you are, what you really desire, let alone how to have it, or even believing that you deserve it. Because if you've spent most of your life in survival mode or achievement mode, one of the questions you may have never stopped to ask yourself is, should I be doing this? You're just checking off boxes and doing what it is you think you are supposed to be doing per the expectations that were heaped upon you by others. Okay. You also may struggle with not knowing how to express your feelings in a healthy way. We touched on that. Meaning, I said healthy. You may only like to express one emotion, anger. And here's the thing, anger is a mask for hurt, frustration, feeling powerless or helpless. It's easier to be angry than to vulnerably admit that you're feeling weak or that you're feeling, an emotion that you don't want to share, that you think puts you at risk of being hurt. Okay. Now, how do all of these things affect your relationship with your husband? Well, if you had any of those not so goods, it's going to cause major problems when it comes to communication, because what you're going to do in your relationship, and all these scenarios may not apply to you, but just think about the one that does, okay? Because you may find yourself doing what I call repress and pretend. So what that means is he's doing something maybe that you don't like or don't agree with for whatever reason, right? It may not even be something necessarily wrong that he's doing. You could have your own reasons linked to whatever's going on in your past as to why you are reacting the way you are to whatever it is he's saying or doing. So, but rather than speak up in the moment in a healthy way, you swallow it and you pretend like everything is okay until finally something happens that's like the straw that breaks the camel's back and you explode, okay? And the problem with that explosion is that you damage your relationship with your husband because you say things that you don't mean. You rage because it's all this pent up emotion that you did not express in a healthy way. And so you end up taking something, and to him, it's like you're blowing it totally out of proportion and you're going crazy. But to you, it's like you're just finally letting it all out. And so you can't do that. You can't be exploding on him like that. You don't want him to do that to you. And so repressing and pretending like everything is okay, that's not going to help you, because those emotions are going to come out. They're going to come out. The other thing you may actually do is the flip side. You may always be walking around on eggshells because you struggle with a fear of abandonment. You really kind of always feel a sense of anxiety or insecurity in your relationship. You kind of are always waiting for the other foot to drop. You're kind of somehow waiting for, okay, I'm in, but I'm not really all in. Like you've got your exit strategy, maybe not top of mind, but in the back of your mind. Well, if this goes wrong or sour, you've got this self-protective mode going on, and you're tiptoeing around because you're afraid he'll leave you if you say or do the wrong thing. And so it kind of does tie into the pretending, except in this one, you're not exploding because you don't want to do anything to make him think or negatively about you. And so really what you're doing is you're pretending like you're happy all the time, like everything is okay. And so you end up just swallowing it down. I had a client and she struggled with abandonment issues. Her mother left her with her father when she was a little girl and was in and out of her life after that. And as a result, she spent a lot of time with babysitters and things like that. And so in those scenarios, she never wanted to be a bother. She never wanted to be a burden. She felt like her job was to make it as easy as possible for people to be around her, to take care of her. Why? Because the underlying story was, well, because if my own mother could leave me, why wouldn't these people? So let me just tiptoe around and be the quietest version of myself that I can, smiling, happy. I have to be likable. Okay. And it was exhausting, so exhausting emotionally that she developed an autoimmune condition. Okay. So it can get serious physiologically when we are not being honest with ourselves, when we are constantly swallowing our feelings, when we are pretending to be someone we're not, and being happy all the time is pretending, because no one is happy all the time. We all get tired. Excuse me. And even my client with her illness, she was hiding it. She never really revealed how sick she really was to her husband because she didn't want to put that on him. And that changed, of course, through our work. But can you imagine how that must have made him feel? Your husband loves you. And I'm talking to you right now watching this masterclass, not just her. Your husband loves you. Do you have any idea how he would feel if he knew you were suffering and you never let him do anything about it to help you, to support you? It would break his heart. He loves you. He wants you to be happy for real, not to pretend. And he's not going to leave you if he finds out, oh my goodness, she cries, or oh my goodness, she has a different mood, or oh my goodness, she can be difficult at times. You're a human being. You're not perfect. And you do not want to set yourself up for failure in that way and creating that expectation by walking around on eggshells because you're scared he's going to leave you. Okay. Like I said, in this case, in this scenario, you did good. You chose wisely. Not a good man. He's not going to leave you. He loves you. But please believe me, he knows that there is something there that's missing. That true emotional, vulnerable connection. He's not going to press it or push it, but he can feel it. Okay. So what can develop, and it's interesting because they all kind of flow together. What can also be an issue or can develop from that past that we talked about is you can develop a wall around your heart, even though you're married, meaning you never really say what you feel because you don't want to feel vulnerable, because vulnerability equals weakness. You're actually afraid to rely on him and you need to feel independent. Now, this is important because let's say, for example, your dad, I had a woman that I worked with, and her father was a drug addict, and he would spend the money on women. He would get drunk and he would come home and beat her mom. And then they would have to go get him out of jail. So what she learned from that, was that men are not reliable. And so as a result of that, as an adult, she struggles with being fiercely independent. Okay. Now, if you're married, that's a problem because you're not alone. And I'll tell you something, your husband wants it, because if you married a good man, he's going to be a man that is, and I'm going by my definition. Okay. You have your own of however it is you want to, because a good man for me might not be a good man for you. But in my definition, which I think there are some universal traits that do apply across the board, and that is that he be a good provider, that he be loyal, that he be a loving, kind, and compassionate, empathetic leader of his family. Okay. And so in him being that loving leader of the family, if you are being so independent that you are borderline emasculating him or silencing him, making him feel like he cannot, have an opinion or make a decision, you're wearing yourself out. You're trying to do your job and his. You're trying to run your lane and get into his. And being the loving leader of your family does not mean that he's making unilateral decisions. I didn't say a tyrant. I didn't say domineering. You guys are still a team. But when you're in a car, somebody's got to be in the driver's seat. Okay? Somebody's got to turn the wheel. Two people do not fit in the driver's seat. Okay? And what I'm saying is if you have a masculine man, this is how he's wired. This is how he wants to show up in the relationship. And what is very important to men is to be respected. And when you are fiercely independent and act like you don't need him, when you silence his opinions, when you silence his voice, when you emasculate him, okay, he starts to disconnect from you. You start to lose your appeal. Because a man wants to be with a woman who makes him feel like a man, just like you want to be with a man that makes you feel like a woman. Like, I don't have to make all the decisions. I don't have to figure this out by myself. What's the point of being married and having a partner if you're trying to do everything alone? What's the benefit? What's the benefit of having two if you're still trying to function as one? Okay. You also may struggle with having a lack of trust that you can rely on him to be there when you need him to be. So now you feel like you have to do things or figure it out on your own. And this is not saying that it's all or nothing, right? You may know that you can rely on your husband to pick you up if you have a flat tire, but let's say, for example, in your business, you're struggling. Do you talk to him about that? Or maybe in your career, you're having a challenge at work. Do you talk to him about that? Or maybe you're having a situation with one of your family members. Do you talk to him about that? Or do you feel like that's something that you have to figure out on your own? When you're dealing with some emotional stuff that you know is from your past or whatever, do you keep that to yourself? Do you feel like you have to figure that out on your own? Or can you go to him? Is your husband your best friend? Is he the person that you are able to pour your heart out to and know that he's got it? Because whether or not he's got it isn't so much dependent on him, because again, we're predicating this on the concept that he is a good man, is that you're not allowing him to hold your heart. You're not allowing him to be there for you. You're not allowing him to hold you up. Remember I talked about how you're that person, you hold everybody up, you do all that. That gets tiring and old really fast. And that's where those feelings of loneliness come in. So if you are married to a good man, don't you understand that he wants to be your rock? He wants to be, maybe not rock, your pillow, your soft place to fall. Your rock in that he wants to be your solid foundation, but your pillow in that you can just lean into him and allow him to do the things, quite frankly, you don't want to do. Okay, let's be real. But see, if you don't trust him, then the reason why you don't let him or allow him to do more has to do with you, not him. Okay. And again, that's based upon the things that we've talked about, these past traumatic experiences. And we're going to get into your beliefs because that has a big part of it too. So my question for you is, and you can pause this and really ponder over it, is how do you feel your past is affecting your marriage today, right now? So I want you to really take some time and think about that. And you can journal it. I should have said at the very beginning that you need a pencil and a paper. And in the future, if you ever come to anything that I do, watch a masterclass, please bring a notebook and a pen. You will need it, okay? I'm always going to ask you questions. There's always going to be opportunities for lots of notes to be taken, insights, etc. Okay? Here are some questions for self-reflection. I want you to pause this here and write these down. And I want you maybe later on, or when you have time, I want you to really complete these prompts and fill this out and really think about what's going on with you. So, for example, or not example, but what they say are, when my feelings are hurt, my first reaction is to fill in the blank. And do I feel completely comfortable sharing vulnerably from the heart with my husband? Why or why not? And why do I hate for people to see me cry? Okay. So if you want to stay happily married to a good man, you've got to heal your past, because all of this little stuff, whether it's to a big degree or a small degree, is affecting your relationship. Okay. And even though he's a good man, he shouldn't have to continue to put up with behaviors that really are not his fault, and that you absolutely have the ability to change and shift. Now, What you did when you didn't know better, forgive yourself. But now you're learning in this moment. And now that you know better, we're going to talk about how to do better, okay? So a big part of that is changing your beliefs about men and marriage, because those experiences from your childhood wrote on the slate of who you are, okay? Your beliefs, if you want to think about them as like, if you want to think of your brain as like a computer program, your beliefs are like the programs running in the background. So, you know, on your computer, certain applications, for example, Outlook is never going to allow you to create a video. Okay, it's not what it's designed for. It's not going to work. You would have to go in and rewrite the programming in order for it to be able to do that. So we are similar. We develop a set of black and white beliefs about the world, about ourselves, about men, about women, about relationships, about money, about everything when we're little. So by the time we're about 4 or 5, most of what the black and white, and children think in very black and white terms, what we believe at that age sticks with us for the rest of our lives unless we actually take deliberate and intentional action to change it. And here's the thing, whatever you believe to be true for you is, meaning your brain is going to seek out opportunities and experiences that are going to prove you right. Not what's best for you, but what is familiar and what it believes to be true for you. So if you believe all men are liars, make no mistake, when you get to the age to when you start dating and getting into relationships with men, guess what kind of men you're going to always date? Liars, okay? And you probably did until you met your current husband. But if that belief is still there that all men are liars, you still don't fully and completely trust your husband, even though he's never done anything to warrant that. It has nothing to do with him. It has to do with a belief you formed in childhood that you then had confirmed through subsequent experiences, okay? So any negative beliefs you developed in childhood about men, like I said, have only been confirmed in your adult relationships because your brain is looking for what it believes to be true. Oh, all men are liars? Okay, let's go get some liars. That's just the way it works. Not what's good, it's what's familiar. Because if you believe all men are liars, you better believe that's because your father or another hugely significant male figure in your life was a liar, and that's where that came from. Okay? And so if you believe all men are liars, you're going to attract the type of men that you believe men are supposed to be. And then when you don't, and you're with some guy that's not a liar, your brain starts going, I don't know what's going on here. Okay? Now, your husband may actually be the first healthy, non-toxic relationship you've been in. And that's why you're here, because you understand that something's got to give here. Something's got to give. And I know it's me. You know, on some level, I can't really blame him. I know it's me, but I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing differently or what this thing is that I'm feeling. And all it is, I'm going to tell you right now, you're not crazy. All it is your beliefs are out of alignment with the relationship that you're in. You chose wisely, okay? But your beliefs didn't change. And so your brain is still trying to prove you right. It's still trying to make sense of a situation that it does not compute. And so that causes some like turmoil mentally, okay? And sometimes it can mean that you're causing drama because that's what's familiar and that's what's normal to you. And so this relationship, despite however many years you've been together, it still feels unfamiliar. You still always are kind of feeling in the back of your mind, like maybe you feel like I don't deserve him. Or maybe you feel like, you know, he's too good for me. And like I said, if you're the one bringing the drama, then you may even be feeling guilty because you feel like you're not loving him the way that he's loving you. And you feel like he deserves better. And so you beat yourself up a lot. You feel guilty. And if your beliefs don't change about men, about marriage, then nothing changes. You know, we talked about your beliefs being like a computer program. Your programming, if you don't intentionally and deliberately delete, write over, whatever, get rid of the old programming and put in new, then nothing changes, okay? Also, here's something that you really need to, why your beliefs are so critically important, is because in the same way that you formed your beliefs from what you saw, from what you heard, because a lot of times our beliefs are formed from the things our parents say, how they behave in certain situations, like their example, like we'll use money. The languaging around money, oh, we don't have any money, or you saw your parents struggle, then you develop the belief that money is scarce. And you were a little kid, you didn't even know what money was. You just knew that it was something that you never had enough of. And so you grow up to be an adult and you have that same belief and you're always struggling financially. So it's the same thing when it comes to relationships. Your children are being programmed by your beliefs that they see you living out every day, by your fears and by your example. So your daughters, if you have daughters, they're watching you. You're teaching them what it means to be a woman, what it means to be a wife. They're not listening to your words. I mean, they are, but they're more watching your example, and they can feel every emotion that you are giving off. Same thing with your boys. You're teaching them how to be treated by a woman, or what a relationship with a woman looks like, and how you're interacting with your husband. And like I said, for the most part, he's a good man. So your relationship is, for the most part, healthy, but we're talking about you and what you're bringing to the table and what that can be, what you could be imprinting, upon your children. And so that's another reason why you really want to check your beliefs at the door and get them to, and clear up, reprogram, get rid of anything that is not conducive to you showing up 100% committed and in a healthy way, communicating, etc. in your relationship. You want to do that so that that's what they now see, feel, and hear, and experience. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay. So the question for reflection for you is, what are your beliefs about men in marriage costing you and your marriage in time, happiness, and energy? Go ahead and pause and just think about that. And I want you to write the answer down. Okay? Because this is important. Sometimes we get so focused on going to our job or running our business and making money and paying bills that we don't understand that what seems to be intangible actually is quite tangible, okay? Because your marriage, which is the closest relationship you're ever going to have with another human being, if that's not on solid footing, solid ground, that affects everything else, okay? It affects how you show up at work. It affects how you show up in your business. It affects how you interact with your kids. It affects everything. So if you're feeling uneasy, anxious, insecure, any of the things we've talked about, it just sucks away time. It sucks away energy. It takes away from the happiness that could be shared between the two of you on an even deeper level if all of this stuff was healed and you were really able to show up whole and ready to, go really, truly, and fully all in. Just the fact that you've been in the relationship for all these years does not mean that you've been all in emotionally. Okay? So one of the best ways for you to stay happily married to a good man is to stay in gratitude. You are better together. Like we talked about, that independent spirit that you might have that, works in some settings, but, being in a relationship, in a partnership, and you trying to be independent, no, it doesn't work there, okay? You have to remember you're better together. You are. You're amazing parents. When you guys go on vacation, you have so much fun. The way you guys tag team life, just everyday life, household duties, whatever, how you pay the bills and stuff. You guys make a great team. Focus on that. When you really, and I know that you do, because that's what I talked about, feeling guilty because you're like, oh, he's so good. And then here I am, but stay in gratitude in a healthy way, because listen, he is there. He does love you. So obviously he sees something in you and about you that you don't. Accept his love, receive it, because receiving is also something else that comes out of childhood. If we were not loved on, if we were not made to feel valuable, worthy, or important by our parents, then we're not really going to believe that somebody else is going to want to be pouring all their love and attention into us, even though they're trying to. So we might not receive it. Okay? Receive his love and be grateful for it, because obviously there's something very special about you that this good man sees and loves. So even if you can't see it yet, borrow his belief in you for right now and trust that you are the person that he loves and wants to spend the rest of his life with, and who he believes you are. That you're not some bad, horrible person that you have to hide or whatever, that you're afraid he's going to find out and leave you, etc. No, that's just your past and your trauma talking. That's not what actually is true. Your beliefs are just something that you told yourself over and over again and accepted as true. They're not actually true. Your trauma is just something that happened in the past and there are old feelings lingering there that just need to be released. That's it. You're not stuck. You're not broken. Okay. So you want to be in gratitude for this marriage, for this man, for this relationship. So I want you to stop and really think about what are the 3 best things about being married to your husband. Okay. You know, I mean, we could say a lot of silly things. I mean, for me, can I limit it to 3? I mean, I love the fact that, hey, I know if we go somewhere, I ain't got to worry about driving. Although I have a friend, it's so funny, her husband is in real estate, and so he does a lot of driving for his job. So when they go anywhere together, she does the driving, but hey, to each his own. Me, I like it when I hop in the car, I don't have to drive. So, and by the way, my husband doesn't mind me driving, but I prefer to be chauffeured. I also know that anytime I buy a piece of furniture, you know, something that's modular that needs to be put together, he's going to put it together. So I don't have to waste time trying to figure that out like I did when I was single. You know, there's just so many things. And those are like very day-to-day practical things, but I also feel very safe. I would say that's probably the biggest thing, because I just feel safe when he's home, when he's there, you know, if we're going somewhere. I just know that nobody and nothing is going to hurt me when he's there. I don't worry about anything because I know he's going to protect me. And, you know, I'm sure you feel that way too about your husband, that he makes you feel safe. Okay. But yes, pause and think about and really write down what are the 3 best things about being married to your husband. And you don't have to stop at just 3, because I know it's more than 3. But gratitude shifts you out of complaining. Gratitude shifts you out of, you know, being hard on yourself. It shifts you into just being thankful and grateful that, you know, I believe in God. And so I believe that my husband is a blessing from God. And so if God saw fit to bless me with this man, then that tells me how God feels about me. And that is like, who am I that I get, you know, deserve this blessing? And that just puts me in this state of just being in awe. And just like I said, and just thankful, but not guilty or sad. Okay. And then I also want to ask you to ask yourself, how would your marriage change if you could vulnerably communicate your feelings to your husband without feeling weak and needy? If you didn't feel like you always had to be the strong one or hold it down or hold it together, if you could just let yourself fall apart and know that he can hold all your pieces, that he's strong enough to hold you and be your rock and your pillow. How would that feel? To just trust and know that you can pour your heart out to him and he's not going to judge you, that he's not going to leave you. How would that feel? So, in order to have that experience of being able to open and share vulnerably, in order to really create this solid, deep relationship, to stay happily married to a good man, because it's not just about staying at this static level of happiness. It is about that happiness and joy continuing to strengthen and deepen and become more meaningful, because it has. You all have had so many shared experiences and years together, but imagine how much deeper it would be if you were like really, truly in sync and on the same page. Truly, intimacy is not sex. Intimacy is that emotional connection and bond, that trust. that knowing that he knows who I really am and he still likes me more than likes me, loves me, finds me desirable. Okay. So what do you have to heal personally in order to deepen your love? Well, first, you got to heal that inner child. You know what we talked about, the little version of you that received the trauma, the conditioning, and the messaging. You've got to identify what were those traumas, what are those beliefs. You know, you got to identify and acknowledge it, release the hurt around those traumas and the stories you developed from it, so that your view on about yourself, you know, about who you believe you are as a woman and who you need to be in relationships, what you believe to be true about men, and what you believe to be true about those relationships with men. Okay. When you get to the root, because the work, everything that I do is about getting to the bottom of it. I'm never going to listen. We're never going to be, if you were my client, we're never going to be sitting around talking about tips and tricks. What is that? No, we're always going to go to the root of the problem, because I know that if we deal with what's really going on, if we nip it in the bud at the root and get rid of that, then all these subsequent symptoms and problems go away. Okay. So that's step one, is you've got to heal that stuff. And no, you cannot DIY it. It's going to take more than a book. And no, you do not have to go to traditional therapy to do this type of work. It's not mandatory. That's not the only avenue, nor the only way to heal these parts of yourself. Okay. You also are going to have to crush your unhealthy relationship constructs. Because remember, we talked about you've got a good man, but you know, you believe all men are liars or men are unsafe or whatever. Or if you didn't grow up around any men, then you're just dealing with that fear of abandonment. And you're really, really unsure because you don't really know what to expect, because you don't have a whole lot of experience being around men. You know, you didn't grow up, I should say, interacting with a man in your house on a daily basis. And so you just, you know, you've kind of always been out of sorts, figuring it out day by day. And so all of that has to be eliminated. Okay. All of that unhealthy stuff. And then identifying the limiting beliefs and reprogramming them so that you have a positive, healthy view of what it means to be a woman, that you're not this machine, this strong, whatever, you know, what your beliefs are about love, what that means, that you can have standards, that it absolutely is conditional. A person cannot act like a complete fool and expect you to continue to just put up with it and love them. They cannot cheat on you, beat on you, and all those things, and you're just supposed to love them unconditionally. Show me where that's at. That's not written anywhere that any book that I read. So, you know, your constructs and beliefs about love, you know, that has to be changed. And even marriage and what that means. Okay. You might have one foot out the door or be expecting that you might not, you know, be, so your commitment level is not where it needs to be. Okay. So you want to be all in. And the only way that's going to happen is if you change these beliefs. Okay. Because like we've talked about earlier, a computer is never going to do anything differently than what it's been programmed to do. And finally, you really got to get crystal clear on who you are as a woman and how to be a co-creator alongside your husband of a happy, healthy relationship, and then give yourself permission to receive it. Because if you're bringing the drama, it's not just because it's what's familiar, right? That's a part of it. But sometimes it's because if you don't feel like you deserve that love, his love, if you feel overwhelmed by it, if you feel like, wow, then you can be struggling to receive it. And that's going to cause issues in your relationship with him. It all boils down to intimacy and closeness. And that all boils down to how comfortable you are with you and how safe you feel. And you're not going to feel safe if you are still living in your past in the present. And let me say this, your past is never in the past. Your past traumas, your past, and I'm not talking about little stuff. I'm talking about the stuff that changed who you are, the stuff that shaped your belief system and the woman that you have become. That stuff is always right in front of you. No, it is not in your past. It is that 4 to 5-year-old version of you who developed those black and white beliefs. She is always present and driving the bus. And just like you, if a 4 or 5-year-old got into a real bus, You can imagine the disaster that would happen. You have seen the results of the 4 or 5-year-old you who's running the bus of your life make some pretty big mistakes along the way. Okay? And so it's time to take her out of the driver's seat and for you to get in there and regain control of your mindset, heal, and move forward. Okay? Because giving yourself permission to receive his love is a huge part of being able to stay happily married to a good man, and your ability to give it, not just by showing him through your actions or saying it, but by fully opening up your heart, fully letting your guard down and being connected to him, feeling safe to be vulnerable with him. Okay? So that's how you do it. So I want to thank you so much for joining me for this masterclass. I would love to get your feedback and thoughts. So by all means, let me know your thoughts and how this, and any insights or breakthroughs that you got from it. And then if you would like additional support around these areas that we talked about, like I said, this inner child healing, this deep stuff is not something that you can do on your own, but this is actually my area of expertise and what I help my clients do on a regular basis, specifically healing the childhood trauma that is directly related to how you view yourself, as in your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your good husband, or if you're single, your relationships with men. You know, you want to find a good one. There's a reason why you can't. It's not because they're not out there, right? And then, of course, your relationships with money, your relationship with money, I should say. So all of the stuff that's directly responsible for the challenges you're having in the present day, you know, from these like anchors in your past, that's what I help my clients to work through. And then we move forward and work on new stuff. Okay. So if you are interested in learning more about that, I want to extend to you this special invitation to click the button below this video to watch what's coming next. Or if working with me at this time is not something you're interested in, no problem. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. All righty, you take care.